Imagine waking up 10,000 years ago. You have a family to feed, a river to cross, and a journey of nearly 100 miles ahead of you. Today, that trip might take only a couple of hours by car, but back then, there were no roads, no engines, no bicycles, not even horses. So how did people travel? Did they ride mammoths? Maybe giant wolves? Or maybe even a dinosaurs? Well, let's settle that last one immediately. No, humans never rode dinosaurs. Not because dinosaurs were impossible to tame, but because they disappeared around 66 million years before the first humans ever walked the Earth. To put that into perspective, that's like asking if the ancient Egyptians watched Netflix or if Julius Caesar had Facebook. The timelines simply don't overlap. In fact, if Earth's entire history were compressed into a single calendar year, dinosaurs would disappear on December 26th, while modern humans wouldn't arrive until the last few minutes before midnight of December 31st. But that raises an even bigger question. If horses weren't domesticated until only about 5,500 years ago, what did humans use before then? The answer is surprisingly simple. For almost all of human history, we didn't ride anything, we walked. It's easy to forget just how recent horses are in the story of humanity. Modern humans, or Homo sapiens, have existed for roughly 300,000 years. The earliest widely accepted evidence of horse domestication dates to around 2200 BCE on the Eurasian steppes, with genetic evidence suggesting the ancestors of today's domestic horses spread rapidly from that region. But before that, people certainly hunted horses, but riding and widespread horse use came much later. That means humans spent, well, over 95% of their history without riding horses. Instead, they relied on something evolution had spent millions of years perfecting: their own legs. Humans may not be the fastest animals. A horse can outrun us. A deer can outrun us. Even your average house cat can outrun the fastest person alive. So why weren't our ancestors constantly left behind? Because evolution didn't build us for speed, it built us for endurance. Unlike most mammals, humans can sweat across nearly our entire bodies. We have long legs, strong tendons, an efficient walking gait, and perhaps our greatest advantage is the ability to keep moving long after other animals need to stop. Scientists call this endurance running. Anthropologists believe early humans practiced something known as persistence hunting. Instead of sprinting after prey, they simply followed it, hour after hour, mile after mile. Animals like antelope are incredibly fast, but they cool themselves mainly by panting. When forced to run continuously in the heat, they eventually overheat and slow down, while humans keep sweating, keep walking, keep jogging. Eventually, the exhausted animal stops, and the hunters catch up. It sounds unbelievable. Yet this strategy is still practiced by a few traditional hunter-gatherer groups today, including the San people of southern Africa, offering scientists a glimpse into one of humanity's oldest survival techniques. Ironically, one of the greatest travelers in Earth's history wasn't the fastest animal. It was the one that simply refused to quit. Walking wasn't just enough to survive. It allowed humans to conquer the world. And around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, groups of modern humans began leaving Africa with no horses, no wagons, no maps, and no GPS. Only families carrying what they could hold. Generation after generation, they slowly expanded into the Middle East, Europe, Asia, eventually reaching Australia by sea, and much later, the Americas. By the time civilization appeared, humans had already explored nearly every continent on Earth, and almost every step of that incredible journey was taken on foot. When you really think about it, the greatest migration in history wasn't powered by animals, it was powered by determination. But walking had limits. You could only carry so much food, only travel so far in a day, and crossing rivers or oceans presented an entirely different problem. So before humans ever learned to ride animals, they invented something even more revolutionary. They built vehicles, not with wheels but with wood. Imagine standing on the edge of a wide river. The land you need is just on the other side. You can see it. But there's one problem. Humans aren't built to swim long distances while carrying food, children, or tools. Crossing rivers wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. Strong currents, deep water, and hidden predators could turn a simple crossing into a deadly mistake. So our ancestors came up with a solution that would change human history forever. They built boats long before the invention of wheels, and long before horseback travel. Humans were already floating across rivers and coastlines. At first, these were probably nothing more than logs tied together with vines, simple rafts easy to build, good enough to stay afloat. Then dugout canoes, carved from massive tree trunks using stone tools and controlled fire. They were heavier, stronger, and much easier to steer. Archaeologists believe these early boats allowed humans to reach places that would have otherwise been impossible. One of the greatest mysteries in archaeology is how humans reached Australia. The continent has been inhabited for at least 50,000 to 65,000 years. Even when sea levels were lower during the Ice Age, there was never a complete land bridge connecting Asia to Australia. That means people had to cross open water. Nobody knows exactly what those first boats looked like. They've long since disappeared, because wood rarely survives tens of thousands of years. But the people made it. Entire families crossed stretches of ocean using technology so simple that we can only imagine it today. Before horses ever carried humans across land, boats were already carrying them across the sea. If horses weren't our first transportation partner, who was? Surprisingly, it wasn't an animal people rode. It was one that ran beside them, the dog. Dogs were the very first animals humans domesticated, likely somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 years ago, though some evidence suggests the relationship may be even older. At first, dogs weren't pulling sleds or guarding farms. They were hunting companions. Their incredible sense of smell helped locate prey. Their hearing warned humans of approaching danger. And unlike wolves, which are naturally cautious around people, domesticated dogs gradually evolved to cooperate with us. It became one of the most successful partnerships in the history of life. But eventually, humans discovered dogs could do much more than hunt. In cold northern regions like Siberia, Alaska, Greenland, and northern Canada, winter transformed the landscape. Deep snow made walking painfully slow. But dogs loved running in the snow. Over time, people developed sleds, simple wooden frames that slid across ice with very little friction. A single dog could pull a modest load. A team of dogs could pull hundreds of kilograms. Suddenly, food, tools, and even people could travel across frozen landscapes much faster than before. What had once taken days could now take hours. For Arctic cultures such as the Inuit and other indigenous peoples of the far north, sled dogs weren't just convenient, they were essential for survival. Without them, transporting supplies across frozen wilderness would have been nearly impossible. And unlike horses, dogs needed relatively little food. They were also agile, resilient, and perfectly adapted to icy environments. Even today, there's a sled dog races like the famous Iditarod in Alaska, are reminders of a technology that once connected isolated communities across vast frozen distances. It's easy to think of transportation as something powered by engines. But for thousands of years, the engine had 4 legs, a wagging tail, and an incredible willingness to run. Here's something surprising. When humans first began working with animals, they didn't immediately climb onto their backs. In many cases, animals were far more valuable carrying supplies than carrying people. Think about it. A person might weigh 70 kilograms. Add food, weapons, water, clothing, and suddenly you're asking an animal to carry over 100 kilograms for miles. Not every species can do that safely. Instead, early civilizations discovered something far more practical. Pack animals. Animals that carried goods while humans walked beside them. This allowed entire communities to transport more food, more tools, and more trade goods than any person could carry alone. In many ways, the first transportation revolution wasn't about moving people, it was about moving supplies. And no animal did that better than the one we overlooked today, the humble donkey. Donkeys don't usually get much attention. They aren't as fast as horses, they aren't as majestic, and they're rarely the hero of historical paintings. But without donkeys, some of the world's earliest civilizations might have developed much more slowly. Around 5,000 years ago, people in northeastern Africa began domesticating wild asses. The result was the donkey. Strong, patient, and remarkably tough. Unlike horses, donkeys could survive with less water. They handled rocky paths better, they remained calm under heavy loads, and they could travel through harsh desert environments where other animals struggled. Merchants loaded them with grain, copper, salt, pottery, textiles, and precious stones. Long before large caravans crossed the Sahara with camels, donkeys were already linking villages and kingdoms through trade. They didn't make dramatic charges across battlefields. They quietly carried civilization on their backs. And while donkeys transformed deserts and dry landscapes, another animal would eventually become so perfectly adapted to those harsh conditions that people gave it a remarkable nickname. They called it the ship of the desert. If you had asked a traveler 2,000 years ago what the most valuable transportation animal in the desert was, they probably wouldn't have said horse. They would have said the camel. There's a reason camels earned the nickname, the ships of the desert. A ship carries people and cargo across an ocean. A camel does the same thing, across an ocean of sand. Deserts are some of the harshest environments on Earth. Scorching daytime temperatures can exceed 45 degrees Celsius, while nights can become surprisingly cold. Water is scarce, food is limited, and endless stretches of sand make travel exhausting. For most animals, it's a nightmare, but for camels, it's home. Contrary to popular belief, camels don't actually store water in their humps. Their humps store fat. When food is scarce, that fat can be converted into energy, and through metabolism, a small amount of water. Even more impressive, camels can lose around 25 to 30% of their body weight through dehydration without dying, while humans can become critically ill after losing only a fraction of that. Their thick lips allow them to eat thorny desert plants, their long eyelashes and closable nostrils protect them from blowing sand, and their broad, padded feet spread their weight, preventing them from sinking into soft dunes. In many parts of North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, camels weren't just transportation, they were survival. Entire trade routes, including sections of the famous Silk Road, depended on camel caravans, carrying silk, spices, incense, gold, and salt across landscapes where wheeled vehicles simply couldn't go. Some caravans stretched for hundreds of animals, crossing deserts for weeks at a time. Without camels, many ancient trade networks would have been impossible. But deserts weren't the only places humans had to adapt. High in the mountains, a completely different animal became indispensable. Imagine trying to carry heavy supplies up a steep mountain trail. The air is thin, the paths are narrow. One wrong step could send you tumbling hundreds of meters. Horses struggle in many of these environments, but another animal was built for them, the yak. Native to the Himalayan region, yaks are perfectly adapted to life at high altitude. Their thick coats protect them from freezing temperatures. Their large lungs and efficient blood help them thrive where oxygen levels are much lower than at sea level. For thousands of years, communities in Tibet, Nepal, and surrounding regions have relied on yaks to transport food, fuel, building materials, and trade goods across rugged mountain passes. In places where roads still don't exist, yaks remain one of the most reliable ways to move supplies. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the people of the Andes Mountains found a different solution: the llama. Llamas aren't large enough to comfortably carry adult humans. Instead, they excel as pack animals. They can carry moderate loads over long distances, while navigating steep, rocky terrain with remarkable balance. For the ancient Inca civilization, llamas were essential. They transported crops, textiles, pottery, and other goods across an empire connected by thousands of kilometers of mountain roads. Without wheels, without horses, without engines, just people and llamas. These animals remind us of an important truth, that there was never one perfect transportation animal, and each environment demanded its own specialist. Then there were elephants. Few animals inspire as much awe. Standing several meters tall and weighing up to 6 tons, elephants possess incredible strength and intelligence. For thousands of years, people in parts of South and Southeast Asia have worked with elephants to move enormous logs, clear forests, and transport heavy equipment through dense jungles where carts often became stuck. Their strength made them invaluable long before modern machinery existed. Elephants were also used in ceremonies and, in some historical periods, in warfare. Leaders such as Hannibal Barca famously crossed the Alps with war elephants during the Second Punic War, one of history's most daring military campaigns. Although African elephants have occasionally been tamed, they were never widely domesticated in the way horses, dogs, or cattle were. Asian elephants proved more suitable for long-term work with humans, though even today they remain fundamentally wild animals that require experienced handlers. Their role wasn't about speed, it was about power. Sometimes civilization doesn't need something fast, it needs something capable of moving what nothing else can. By now, a fascinating pattern begins to emerge. People living in snowy Arctic regions relied on dogs and reindeer. While mountain communities depended on yaks and llamas, desert civilizations trusted camels and donkeys, and forest cultures worked with elephants. Every environment offered different challenges, and humans adapted by forming partnerships with the animals best suited to those landscapes. This flexibility became one of our greatest strengths. Rather than trying to force one solution everywhere, humans learned from nature. They observed, experimented, and built civilizations around the animals that could thrive where they lived. But eventually, one animal would begin changing the world in a way none of the others ever could. Not because it was the strongest or the biggest or even the smartest, but because it could do something almost no other transportation animal could match. It could carry people fast across enormous distances. And that would transform human history forever.